Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to discuss the AWS Certified AI Practitioner exam. I'm going to walk through the exam guide, the exam details, and I'm going to go through some example practice questions so you get an idea of what sorts of questions will come up in the exam and how difficult they are as well. Now, the AWS Certified AI Practitioner is a new certification from AWS, and it's in response to the growing demand for people who understand how to use and implement services based on AI and machine learning as well. So AWS has already got a very broad set of services in the category of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so really this is about understanding those at a little greater depth so that you know how to build solutions and utilize these technologies, how to optimize them, how to make sure that you do so securely and ethically as well. So let's get into it. We'll start off having a look through the details on the AWS website. I'm on the AWS website. This is the page for the AWS Certified AI Practitioner exam. So this is a foundational level exam. Don't let that fool you. However, this is not the place to start if you don't know anything about AWS. I would highly recommend that you already have a foundational understanding of AWS so that you understand the core services on AWS as well as VPCs and that kind of thing. So recommendation would be to at least cloud practitioner level, maybe even associate level solutions architect exam would be even better as a precursor to actually taking this exam. As you can see, the exam format here is 65 questions and you've got 90 minutes duration. So a relatively large number of questions for the time frame, but they are mostly fairly short. So you can move fairly quickly if you have the requisite level of training and knowledge. Cost is $100 US, 50% discount, of course. If you have done an AWS exam before, you do get that benefit. Now, the intended candidate is individuals who are familiar with but don't necessarily build solutions using AI ML technologies on AWS. So what you can take away from that is this is more of a theoretical exam. It's not about building, it's not about deploying. I would recommend that you have some experience practicing so that you do understand how to, at least at a high level, sort of build some basic solutions using some of the AWS AI and ML services. That's going to set you up for the exam better. But this exam is not really about implementation and building. Okay, so that's more at the associate level and the specialty level with the machine learning engineer associate and the machine learning specialty. So it does give you some candidate role examples here. Of course, these are less hands-on. Okay, so business analysts, they might need to understand some of this technology, but they don't necessarily need to know how to build it. IT support, high-level understanding required. Marketing professionals, they might just need to understand how to market and say, well, we're utilizing AI services, we're building, and these are the benefits, that kind of thing. So testing options, as always, online, or a proctored exam in a testing center as well. So what we'll do is let's go across and review the exam guide. So this is the exam guide. This is the first version of this exam. So it's the AIF code and then C01 being the first version of the exam. It's intended for individuals who can effectively demonstrate overall knowledge of AI, ML, generative AI technologies, and associated AWS services and tools independent of a specific job role. So again, it's fairly high level here. This is really about understanding how you can implement AI and ML within AWS. So this exam will validate a candidate's ability to complete the following tasks. Understand AI, ML, and generative AI concepts, methods, and strategies in general on AWS. So again, high level. Understand the appropriate use of AI, ML, and generative AI technologies to ask relevant questions within the candidate's organization. So I guess this is more around sort of ethics and security considerations and that kind of thing, rather than actual implementation, but understanding how and when you might use AI or ML and what the benefits would be that you would get from using these services. Determine the correct types of AI ML technologies to apply to specific use cases. Think of that as AWS saying, which of their services should you recommend to your customer or organization, right? It's about understanding which AWS services you should be using. And then use AI, ML, and generative AI technologies responsibly. Of course, there are ethical and security considerations when we're deploying AI. We've got to be very, very careful. This is an evolving space. and we need to just understand some of those fundamental concepts to make sure that we don't make any mistakes that could be costly to the organization. Now, as you can see here in the target candidate description, it does say the candidate should have up to 6 months exposure of AI/ML technologies on AWS. Certainly, if you're doing our training courses, that's not true. We will actually make sure that you understand some of the fundamentals from the very beginning so that you don't need that experience. But again, you shouldn't come into this particular certification without having the fundamental AWS knowledge. So that is a prerequisite. Under recommended AWS knowledge, what you're seeing here is outside of, let's say, SageMaker, which perhaps is a bit more for this exam, but most of what you're seeing here is what you're going to learn if you do the Cloud Practitioner, for example. Okay, core AWS services, shared responsibility model, IAM, global infrastructure, and service pricing models. That's why it's recommended that you have that before you come into this training or this exam. Moving down a little bit, this is what's out of scope. So yes, you're not going to be developing or coding. You're not going to be implementing. So you're not going to be performing optimization. So a lot of the hands-on stuff here is being excluded from the exam. Now, in terms of question types, now when I did this exam, I saw multiple choice and multiple response, which are the types of questions that have been around forever. Now, AWS has now brought in ordering, matching, and case study. It remains to be seen whether you're going to experience this or not. I didn't. Certainly have a look on the internet and see if anyone else is talking about this. They might have had a different experience to me. I did do the beta exam, not the final exam. And so I got multiple choice and multiple response only, but there could then be other question styles as well. Now, let's scroll down a little way, and what we'll get to is, here is the scoring. So the scaled scoring, that's the model that AWS uses, and you need to get 700 points out of 1,000. It's roughly around 70% there. So let's scroll down. Here you've got the content outline. These are the domains. I'm not going to go through every word of all the different task statements underneath, where it does describe the individual domains in a lot more detail. That will help you to understand what you need to know. If you do our training courses, you're going to get everything anyway. We make sure that we cover everything. But let's just talk about the high level. The high level is we've got 5 domains. Those are the core knowledge areas for this exam. First one is fundamentals of AI and ML. Then you've got fundamentals of generative AI. Then you've got applications of foundation models. Then you've got guidelines for responsible AI. And then lastly, security, compliance, and governance for AI solutions. So those are the core areas. Then the exam guide goes through all of the different domains. Again, I'm going to scroll very quickly through these. You can peruse this on the AWS website whenever you wish to. But I just want to get down to the list of services that are included. There are quite a few services included in this exam. Here we go. We've got the in-scope AWS services and features. And these are categorized. We've got analytics, we've got cloud financial management, we've got compute, we've got containers, we've got database, and then of course we've got a long list of machine learning services. Now, machine learning is really a subset of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is a much broader definition of anything that sort of mimics human intelligence, whereas machine learning is one of the disciplines. And a lot of our generative AI that we're all getting used to today, like ChatGPT, is based on machine learning. So very, very important topic on AWS. And they already have a lot of services, many of which have been around for many years as well. Then we've got management and governance, networking, security, storage, and then a list of out-of-scope services. So quite a lot of coverage here. And of course, we will make sure that in our training courses, we cover everything you need to know. Not everything will appear on your exam, but these are the services that may appear on the exam. Let's now have a look at some example exam questions. Now, as this is a foundational level exam, most of the questions are relatively short. That means they might just be a single sentence or a very short scenario. They can vary in length a little bit, but perhaps this is the kind of average sort of length of the actual question. So you can read through this fairly quickly. So let's attempt this question. A company is building a generative AI application with Amazon Bedrock and wants to understand how much data it can include in a single prompt. Bedrock is definitely going to be a big part of the exam. Bedrock and SageMaker may be two of the most prevalent services in exam questions. The question asks, what factor should the company consider? So this question is about prompting and how much data can be included in a single prompt. Let's walk through the answers. So firstly, a temperature setting. So the temperature setting controls the level of randomness in the model's output, and that influences how deterministic or creative the responses are, but it doesn't really affect the amount of data that can be included in a prompt. So next, we have the context window size. Now, this defines how much input the model can process in a single prompt. So it's going to determine the maximum number of tokens, that's words or characters, that can be included in the input for the model to process. Well, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, in the context of this question? But let's make sure that we walk through all of the answers. We don't want to just choose the one that we think is correct and not check every answer. So the next one is maximum inference batch. Well, the inference batch size refers to the number of inputs processed together during inference, but it doesn't really influence how much information can be contained in a single prompt. It's more about processing efficiency rather than input size. So that answer is not so great either. Lastly, we have model architecture. Now, I don't think that's correct because the model architecture describes the structure and components of the neural network. Now, it does affect the model's performance and capabilities, but not how much data can be provided in a single prompt. So I'm certainly going to go with context window size here. So B is the correct answer. Let's move on to the next question. A media company is building a news summarization tool using Amazon Bedrock to generate concise summaries of trending news articles. The company wants to ensure that generated content avoids misinformation and inappropriate topics. Which AWS service or feature will help with this requirement? So again, we're going to walk through these answers one by one. I'll explain my thought process. So firstly, we've got Amazon recognition. Now that's used for image and video analysis. So facial recognition, object detection, that kind of thing. It's not really related to controlling the appropriateness of the content that is returned. So what is Amazon Bedrock Playgrounds? Well, they provide an environment for testing and experimenting with foundation models, but they don't offer specific tools to ensure content appropriateness or control over generated outputs. So I don't think Bedrock Playgrounds are good for this scenario. C is guardrails for Amazon Bedrock. Now, what can guardrails be used for? Well, we can use them to generate content that adheres to certain standards, such as avoiding misinformation or inappropriate topics or harmful content. So that makes a lot of sense. In this scenario, guardrails would help ensure that the news summaries are both accurate and appropriate for the audience as well. So I definitely like C. D is agents for Amazon Bedrock. Now, agents will help orchestrate complex multi-step tasks. So think of workflows. And they do use foundation models, but they don't address the need here to filter or restrict the type of content that gets generated. So I definitely like C, and C certainly is the correct answer in this scenario. Let's move on to another question. Very short one, this one, just a single sentence. Which option is a use case for generative AI models? A, B, C, or D? So is improving network security by using intrusion detection systems a use case for generative AI? Well, not really, no. They're used for monitoring patterns and anomalies in network data. So you can use them with traditional machine learning models, just not generative AI per se. So Gen AI is typically not used for security applications like detecting network intrusions. What about B? So creating photorealistic images from text descriptions for digital marketing. Does that sound like a good use case for Gen AI? Well, if any of us have used Gen AI, you're probably going to say, yes, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it really is a good use case. So Gen AI models do excel at creating new content, images, text, audio, and so on. So that is one of the primary applications of these models, and I think that that is a good answer. So I think B is correct, but as always, we want to check every single answer. So the next one is enhancing database performance by using optimized indexing. Well, I don't think that's correct because improving database performance does involve algorithms and techniques focused on query optimization and indexing, and those are not tasks that are good use cases for Gen AI models. The last one is analyzing financial data to forecast stock market trends. Well, I don't think that's good because predicting stock market trends typically involves statistical models or machine learning algorithms that are going to analyze historical data patterns. That's not really the best use case for Gen AI. So for this question, I'm going to go with B, creating photorealistic images from text descriptions for digital marketing as definitely being a very good use case for a Gen AI model. Okay, the last question I'm going to go through here. A business is developing a machine learning model to analyze large archived data sets. These data sets are several gigabytes in size, and the company does not require immediate access to the predictions. What SageMaker inference option should the company choose? As I mentioned before, Bedrock and SageMaker are probably two of the most prevalent services on the exam, so you've got to make sure that you really understand these two services. So let's walk through these in order, starting with batch transform. So this does sound like a good solution to me. So this would be good when you need to perform inference on large data sets and you don't need real-time results. And that's because it allows processing data in bulk, and it's definitely optimized for situations where immediate model predictions are not required. So for example, analyzing multiple gigabytes of archived data, that would be a good solution, and that seems to be the requirement here. So I like that as a good match for the requirements. The next answer is real-time inference. Well, this is designed for low latency scenarios where the predictions are needed almost immediately after the request is made. Doesn't really make sense in this scenario because we don't need that immediate access to the predictions. So not the best use case. Third, we've got serverless inference. Well, that's best suited for where you have more sporadic workloads. So maybe the model needs to scale up and down according to demand without you managing the infrastructure because it is serverless. So not the best option in this case where we want to process large and non-urgent data sets in bulk. And finally, we have option D, asynchronous inference. Now, asynchronous inference is intended for scenarios where you need to handle large payloads with a delay, but it's more focused on single prediction requests that take time to process. So not the right use case for bulk processing like a batch transform. So really batch transform here is going to be the correct answer. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope that was useful to you. I hope that gave you a better understanding of this certification. Really is something that I think is going to be in very good demand. It's really going to help people to earn more and really going to help you get in the door as well when companies are just deploying AI at such a fast rate these days. This is a really excellent skill to have. Hopefully you got an understanding as well of what this entails. So definitely make sure that you're in the right training program. It's not an easy exam at all. It's certainly a step up from the Cloud Practitioner. They're both at the same level in terms of being foundational exams, but I think it's quite a bit harder, unless of course you come from a background of having a very good understanding of AI and ML, and then maybe it's a little bit easier for you. But for everyone else, make sure you do at least the Cloud Practitioner first, and make sure you're in a good training course. We have great training courses for the AI practitioner, videos, practice tests, and we're even running a boot camp so that you can learn AI ML skills from the experts with live assistance. Look in the description below for more information about the training programs we have. Best of luck with your exam, and I hope to see you soon.